Anyway, Robert O'Connor is here with us. Rob, how's things getting on with yourself?
I'm back again.
Yes.
You're going to be sick of me. Your listeners are going to be sick of me. But this will probably be my last interview for a while with you guys, because I think I've sort of documented the whole process, which has been quite nice, of this EP, because I first spoke to you, I think it was January last year.
It was, yeah.
It was the very beginning of this recording. I thought I was going to be done in about 6 weeks, but with producers, they're working with so many different acts. It took nearly more like 6 months before the whole thing was done. And then I spoke to you again just before, I don't know, before the single release maybe, and
I think it was before Ballyfermot Rocks.
Before Ballyfermot Rocks in September,
chat,
was gearing up for the single, and then the single came in November. Ironically, I was supposed to talk to you in November, and you had to somebody else had to fill in for me on that occasion. And here I am again. The EP is released now in 2 weeks, maybe even less.
Brilliant. I'll just kind of show that to the webcam. There
Absolutely.
you go. That's it there. Robert O'Connor.
It does exist.
Yeah, Resistance. Yes. There's 4 tracks on it. We just played the first one there. Tell us a story about Over.
Over is where the whole thing began, and it was too late. I mean, I wrote it just after the album came out, so it was obviously too late for that. We didn't do any reissues on the album. God knows I had enough stock left over from the original version. So it was really quite annoying, because I always felt like it was definitely one of the stronger tracks that I had written, and I felt like it was important for me to do something again that I could include it on. So I've had the track for maybe 2 years, even more, and it was written probably in about 5 or 10 minutes, I'd say, one of the shorter ones, and which I always think they turn out the best, because they're not, you don't think about them too much, they're just delivered and done, and I don't touch them then. So it's the 4th track on the EP. It's the lead single, I suppose, and that's pretty much it.
Brilliant. And just in terms of your music, I noticed that it's quite modern pop, and the lyrics as well. Like you mentioned about texting on phones and emails and different things.
Oh,
it's kinda
in Resistance, that's that is quite modern, I suppose. But generally speaking, I don't know. I've had a lot of people say that it's I don't know if classic is the word, or like, obviously my influences are a little bit more early sort of 2000s and things like that. I don't listen to radio, as I've said before, so I don't I'm not influenced by what's on the radio at the moment. I listen to older music, or maybe music that's not popular in this country, or things like that. Like people like John Mayer would be big for me, and I don't think that he's ever had a top 40 hit here, so but I do get what you're saying in the sense of mentioning technology and in Resistance. That's very much like, for me, a song of frustration, and I'm sure people will relate to it in different ways, but for me what it's about is the persistent calling people, and when you don't have a manager and you don't have representation, whether you're sending emails at 12 o'clock at night, you're calling people at 9 o'clock in the morning, you're turning up at doors, you're doing all those things to get to the next step, I suppose, with your career. So that's what that track was about. Yeah,
I kind of get what you mean with that. Do you find in some of your songs that maybe sometimes you might have too much lyrics? I've heard some people might have said that. I don't know if that...
Yeah. There was a review. I mean, to be quite honest with you, the reviews have been like quite good, and I don't expect anything more than quite good for this, because it was done on a shoestring budget sort of thing, and you can't expect for people to rave about something when it's not incredibly glossy and whatever. But you're absolutely right. But that is something that I wouldn't say it's intentional, but it's not something that worries me to have too many lyrics, because I do like that sort of slightly offbeat vibe of I used to listen to a lot of Alanis Morissette and Savage Garden, where the lyrics don't necessarily fit in perfectly with the music. There's a lot of disjointedness, and if that's a word, and things like that. But people have been saying that, so I think for some people they maybe think it's a songwriting flaw, or I don't know. I guess people will interpret it in different ways, but for me it's a case of that is something that has seeped through from my influences personally.
Okay, yeah. Well, I suppose it's one of those things. I mean, people like Alison Morissette for that particular thing, don't they? So
I don't write in a traditional way, It's kind of like, for me, generally speaking, I write like lyrics as if they're almost poems, and then sometimes the melody will come at the same time, or sometimes it will be like a collaboration with somebody else. So things are bound to not fit perfectly sometimes when it's all been done separate, you know. To me, the lyric definitely is the most important thing. It's the story, and it's what an average listener will hear. You know, maybe musicians will hear the bass line first, or whatever instrument they play with. The average, you know, listener of music will hear the lyric.
I think a real lover of music will go for the lyric more than the music, would they? Because I've
I don't know. It depends, I guess, on what your passion is. I mean, but for me, and I think sometimes it's really important to remember things like put hooks in there, and you know, which is why you collaborate with producers and, you know, different musicians. Because if you were to do everything yourself, even if you did have the skills, I think it's, you know, unless you're George Michael or something where he produces most of his stuff himself because, you know, he's a genius, but like, unless you're that level, I think it's a very bad idea to try and do everything yourself and, you know, lock yourself in your bedroom and produce it on your MacBook, because you need to be open to other people's ideas. Because for me, my strong point is the lyrics. Someone else that I might work with will come up with the hook.
Yeah,
you know.
Absolutely get you. Well, we're going to go on to talk about Acoustic 66. For people that don't know, I know I've mentioned it in the last couple of weeks, a little bit about the gig, but for people that don't know, talk about what the gig is actually about. John Pratt is the guy that runs it.
Great man.
He's a great man, isn't he?
Well, he offers a great opportunity, you know. I mean, in fairness, you know, he's probably, if not the only, one of the only people in Dublin who is not trying to make money from, you know, people who are trying to get their first step, you know, on the ladder, I suppose. It's like, you know, when I played Acoustic 66 pretty early on. I think I might have been only the third person to play the gig or something like that, back in November. And he let me have the show and the venue, which is a great venue just behind the Morrison Hotel in town, as, you know, a complete, he gave me support act and whatever, and then I had, you know, the full evening of an hour and a half to perform a full launch show, which I had never done before. And it didn't cost me a cent, first of all, and second, he had, you know, I didn't have to sort of go around, you know, inviting every single person I knew to the gig, because he had already pre-invited so many people, which was, you know, all you can ask for in something like that. You would never get that with traditional promoters of Dublin, like, you know.
That's really interesting indeed. And I know I've been in touch with John, and I've managed to get some of the acts that have been in on the show to go and play down there, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And you know,
there's a lot of demand to play there now.
There is a lot of demand to play there now, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And I suppose the big factor with it is the no alcohol. Now some people are against that, and some people are with that. What do you think of it? Obviously, it's good from a point of view that people will listen to you.
Initially, I think I was sort of apprehensive about telling people, like friends especially. You know, obviously they will go anyway, but they would maybe have a little bit of a better time if there were a few drinks, or, you know, a drinks reception, because generally speaking, especially for a launch, you would have a little drinks reception first. But in retrospect, it actually worked. It was a completely different atmosphere and environment. You didn't have people constantly going to the bar. You know, for the period that you were on stage, they were there with you and, you know, went on the journey of your music and everything, and there was no sort of people constantly interrupting by, you know, making a racket at the bar. It was the quietest gig I've ever had. I've never experienced anything like it. I mean, you know, if sometimes I listen back to video clips that people have recorded, and you can barely hear the performance, you know, because it's good to listen back to gigs to see where you've gone wrong with things and what you can change and improve on. But generally you can't hear anything because the crowd is so noisy, and not necessarily in a good way, you know. But with this, you could hear a pin drop. So it was a good thing in answer to your question. Yeah,
I totally get you. And I suppose it's when you're in pubs and clubs and different things, people are not 100% listening to you because they're with their friends and drinking. Yeah. So it is a different atmosphere and environment.
This is purely a music event. It's not a pub or a bar, or, you know, really, it's an option to socialise afterwards, I suppose, but it's not somewhere you go to have a chat with your friends or whatever. It's actually somewhere you go to hear new music. Simple as that.
Totally, yeah. And it's on the last Friday of every month. Now this month he had a bit of a complication with something already pre-booked, and he wasn't told about it, so that gig was on last Friday instead of this Friday. But from now on, it's going to be the last Friday of the month, which is really good. Anyway, just we wanted to quickly mention before we go to the break. You mentioned about gigs that you want to play, and you have to pay to play them, which is a very complicated issue, isn't it?
It is something I feel, you know, quite passionate about this time around, given that it's my second attempt, I suppose, at this whole music thing. I've made it very clear from the beginning that even if it means playing considerably less gigs, that I'm never going to pay to play in any way. I'm not going to sell tickets. I'm not going to pay to play. I'm not doing anything like that. If the gig is free, I've no issue playing gigs rather that aren't paid. That's expected. But I'm never going to pay to play, because the last time I did that for the experience, to sort of have access to certain promoters and venues, but that's over, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it to new acts or new artists either. I just don't think it gets you anywhere.
Yeah, and I think even the two of us, we know people that have said stuff to us before about paying to play for gigs, and it just didn't work out, and it's not a good experience or good.
No, the promoter can make the gigs sound like it's something really prestigious, that this person will be there, and 90% of the time it's complete lies. So I think avoid them at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely. That was Catherine Green. She was in with us back in August, and she played Ballyfermot Rocks as well. She's originally from South Africa, but she's been living in Ireland the last couple of years on the unsigned music scene. Sinead McNally actually introduced me to her. She's actually a really nice sound.
I'm really liking that track. I'm straight off to download that EP.
Yeah, I know.
Grab a copy from here.
Yeah, that's it there. I'm just showing us the webcam if you're listening in. So she's going to support you at Acoustic 66. I was talking to John about that. So that's
the first time I've heard her. Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's really
as I was saying there, reminds me of sort of Ellie Goulding's vocal, and then that really ambient chill out sound, which is something I love. I think she could do well. I mean, maybe not here, but definitely UK and further afield maybe.
Yeah. So
she's got a nice voice.
Yeah, so that's something to look into anyway. So she's playing a few gigs and stuff. Trevor Halpin is actually listening into us on the website, and we were just talking about stuff.
Talking about him during the break.
Yeah, he doesn't want. But we were just talking about the pay to play, and he was saying, or we were saying, and so was Trevor saying that it's wrong for artists to get exploited in that way, and they should always be helped and promoted and supported and all that crack. I also must mention, if you're listening in, that you can sign up for a free MRU social page, which we all have done anyway. Yeah. It's on mrutv.com, and you can go onto that and you can sign up. It's like Facebook. You just upload your music, or if you're just interested in music in general, you can just browse around and have a look. But sign up for a free page. It's getting close to 1,000 members, and if you happen to become the 1,000 member, there's a free t-shirt with a sign and all that crack. So do get onto it. And there's more information on Facebook if you're going to go on and like Music Review Unsigned, if you haven't already done so. So do check that out, indeed. Right, so I suppose tell us about the actual EP. I must mention to Trevor as well, Robert O'Connor's EP Resistance. Okay, in small print in here, there's a thanks to Trevor Halpin and Keith McLaughlin, as well as some other people that Robert O'Connor has been working with. So I just thought I'd mention that as well. Dave Duggan didn't get a mention. He's a bit annoyed about that, so we'll have to try and give him a mention the next time.
Keep him for the album, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, because he gets some of the credit as well.
You and Trevor were the representatives for the community here. So, you have to say though, there's a very limited amount of thank yous on the in the sleeve. We were dealing with very small amount of space. So.
Okay, so talk to us. David Doyle is managing you recently, and he's an up and coming photographer. So
it's a lot of people are confused by that. I've managed myself the whole time that I've been doing this. I'm kind of sort of co-managed by David Doyle at the moment. It started off as a creative thing. The record was made by the time that I actually met him. I was looking for somebody to look after the artwork for the singles and the EP. I previously had worked with Barry McCall, who's obviously very prolific, and was looking for somebody young who somebody who felt like was on the same track that Barry McCall was years ago, and somebody who really had that potential rather than downgrading. I didn't have the funds to work with him again, but I wanted the appearance of the record to still be professional, and for people who saw it not to realise, oh God, it's poorer quality than the last one. So just absolutely by chance met David Doyle, and it was a really good thing that happened, because just like you guys here and a few other people, he didn't have a financial interest in it. It was really about building his body of work, and seeing sort of the journey develop for me and for him as well. So much thanks to David, and what he's doing for me management wise is more a case of creative than business, but you know, we definitely work together on trying to drive the whole project.
Yeah, I totally get you. The business side can be very complicated, can't it?
Yeah, I think you need to have, I mean, as much as, you know, David and myself both try to get as many opportunities as possible, it is really difficult unless you have that big contacts book that, you know, the traditional business managers have. There's very few of them in Ireland, you know, certainly, but I think I don't expect that of him, and I certainly don't expect it of myself after trying with the last record. I think you definitely need to outsource that kind of thing, and you know, hopefully, you know, I will get a manager definitely outside of Ireland, because I don't think there's anybody here who would, you know, and if somebody wants to prove me wrong, then that's fine, but I don't think there's anybody here who could look after it in the right way.
I get you. Just mentioned there's a couple of writers and producers as well on the actual EP, and you're saying they're very good, they're up and coming and
they're
stuff.
They're great. Like I had finished, you know, after the Distance album came out, I sort of, you know, as I've said before here and other stations, I had just maxed out on everything, on, you know, trying to promote, and with the whole pay to play and paying session musicians, and it was just like all outgoing and nothing coming back to me, and you know, but I got a call from, weirdly, like, you know, school friend who I hadn't seen in 10 or 11 years, and like primary school, not that old, but it was he called me up and he said, like, he was in the music industry now, and basically had these, you know, guys who he'd been working with. He was kind of doing A&R and was talking to these guys, Ian Flynn and Tom McDonald. They work under NDT Productions, and much like the scenario with David Doyle, I was looking for somebody to replicate what I had done in terms of quality. So I was absolutely blown away by how much they invested in this, you know, time wise. I mean, it did take a long time because they were working with a lot of different acts, but like, just from the writing process, you know, we sat down in a room and we just went through exactly what we wanted it to sound like, and I just felt like the whole process was really enjoyable and really in depth, and you know, they both really bring something different to the table in the studio. You know, it's a great team that they have going on, and it's extremely reasonable in terms of the prices they charge. You know, I would recommend any new acts in Ireland, you know, who are looking for like a fairly professional, well, actually very professional, but you know, not also too polished sound, because I think they're very into keeping things sounding
simple,
real, rather than
exactly. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
So obviously, like those people you mentioned, they'd be very helpful to other artists. So obviously, I was even saying to you before going on air, like, they might be interested in coming along to the Songwriter Club at some point, and giving some advice to some young artists that we have going to that and stuff, and you'll come along and give some advice, and I know Trevor will come along and stuff.
Absolutely. You'll have to give me a limited amount of time to speak, because I've, you know, so many things that I want to say to the younger songwriters not to do. Like, okay, you've said enough.
Absolutely, indeed. You also mentioned about things about publishers and stuff, and you were looking at different things as well.
The publishing story is like, you know, and I got another email this morning about a UK band who are very well known, who are looking for material, and this is not something I've signed up for. I don't know how these people find Irish songwriters, but they do. I suppose it's
once you post something on the net, you can be found.
Yeah,
so.
You can, and you know, it's just one of those things. And basically, people, you know, I've had 3 or 4 of these emails going, we need songs for X artist, Y artist, and then they say, we're quite interested in your song, like, you know, let's say Too Late, or like How Many Times, or whatever, from the last record. And I thought, you know, well, that's great, and I wouldn't have an issue giving one of my tracks to another act if it was right, and you know, if I retained some say in how it came out. I wouldn't like to just throw it and let them do whatever they wanted, you know. It would have to be within reason. But my issue with the whole thing is they're looking for a payment from the songwriter, i.e. me, for the track to be heard by the publisher or by the producer who's working for the publisher. And it could be like 60 or 70 euro, which sounds like nothing, you know, to a new act who potentially will get their song heard by a great band who's already known. But realistically, I'm wondering, will it ever go near the band? You know, it's like they hire professional writers 90% of the time, session writers, and to me it just seems like really preying on you know, people who are, I don't like to use the word desperate, but who are really eager to get their music out there, even if it's sung by somebody else. And I just think 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have jumped at the opportunity and spent everything I had on putting my tracks out there. Now I think, much like the pay-to-play gigs, forget it. If they like the track enough, you know, I had toing and froing of an email with a guy a few weeks ago of a certain Irish singer who's, you know, incredibly well known, is putting together a new record, liked one of my tracks, and I said, well, if he really likes it that much, let's sit down and get in a meeting and talk about it. I'm completely open to, you know, giving him the track, but I'm certainly not paying for him to have his producer listen to it. It's just unreasonable. And no.
It should be the other way around, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Really, you should be getting payment or royalty if someone is going to use your track for their.
You have to draw the line somewhere. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't be paying for everything that you do, you know.
Yeah. There's a couple of more people you were going to thank about this actual.
Yeah, actually, while you're mentioning websites, I should just say that you know, I hadn't had a website for a while I wasn't working, and then a guy who I've known for a few years put together a really fantastic website for me. I didn't even have to ask. His name is Matt Ralph. So we'll say hello to him because he's actually not well at the moment. So wish him the best. And he actually designed the whole, in conjunction with David Doyle, the cover of the EP, and he designed the whole website. Everything that you see visually, he has decided on. It's the first time I've been able to sort of say, you just go and do whatever you have to do, because usually I wouldn't trust anybody, but he's been really fantastic. And again, no fees involved, because he likes the music, you know, and even at that, it's amazing. Like, you can like something and still charge, but he's been really great, and that's why he got a credit, because, you know, he's been instrumental in it.
Well, I hope he's all right, and I hope he gets well soon anyway.
Sure,
I suppose that's probably one of the things you're probably doing. Maybe you've done an awful lot better compared to the old album, that you've managed to cut a lot of costs and stuff, and you've got friends and stuff involved that are willing to help you out, and then you're willing to help them out as well, because you're kind of plugging them up the ladder.
I feel like
well.
The only thing I've paid for this time realistically is the songs themselves. Well, I haven't bought the songs, but the production of the tracks, and, you know, I mean, it was the producers who played pretty much all the instruments on the record anyway, so, you know, it was one fee and that was it. And yeah, it's still expensive, but I mean, when you compare it with the first record, photography, manufacturing, you know, so many different things, there's no comparison, you know.
Yeah. And you were mentioning as well, the promo was very different than when you were doing the album. You're only targeting certain people, and you're not trying to get everybody's attention, because you feel there's not everyone's going to get your attention. Isn't that another thing?
Yeah, I think even, like, you know, blogs weren't as popular the first time around. Like, you know, I'm sure everybody knows blogs, you know, online sites where they review and interview and different things like that. But the last time I did get a little bit of help from the blogs. This time, same again, but aside from that, there's no real similarity. I mean, I had a few, you know, newspaper articles the last time, you know, a few spot plays on the big radio stations, never playlisting, and then a couple of playlists around the country on the regional smaller stations. This time, I'm actually not bothering with, I'm not doing a full service to radio with, like, your, let's say, Today FM, 98, all those, you know, RTE, great stations and all that, but there's absolutely no point. There's not a chance that it's going to get playlisted, and it's no reflection on the quality or, you know, on, you know, my personal relationship with the station or anything like that. It's purely a case of they're so tightly playlisted, and you wonder why you maybe hear the same 15 songs every day on a certain show on 98 or any of those, and it's because they're tightly playlisted. I mean, record companies liaise directly with them to what's being played and when, and for me, I'm wasting, you know, silly things like a CD, postage, you know, all these tiny things that, you know, for me, it's just a complete waste of my time to be targeting those people who, you know, will probably end up in a bin, to be quite honest with you. Like, so I'm targeting the people who, you know, there's actually some potential for me to be supported by, you know, like the regional stations, the local stations, college stations, and then, I mean, stations abroad even. I've had, you know, in France and Germany and Japan even last week playing tracks, which to me is, you know, bizarre when you think that you can't even get a national station to play your track in Ireland, and yet someone in Japan is willing to play the track. You know, that to me speaks volumes.
And you've never been to Japan or know anybody?
Never.
It's kind of mad, isn't it?
Nothing. And the same with France or anything like that. There's a radio station called Tease FM, which is fantastic. I don't listen to radio, but I listen to this online, and in France you can hear it on actual radio. But it's like, you know, they play a great selection of music. It's not like they just throw anything up there. It's all perfectly mastered and a really good variety of music. And they A-listed that track that you just played, Older, last November, December. And, you know, I was thrilled, but it would be really nice to have the support of your own country, you know?
It would, wouldn't it? I think you should give us a list of that for the Songwriter Club as well, just for people to send out their MP3s.
Maybe I need to set up a blog
for
all this stuff.
For all that stuff. I know there's a station in Manchester called Salford City Radio, and they play unsigned music as well. So there's another avenue to check out. They're a community radio station as well over there. So there's so many different avenues, but yet the actual avenue that you want to go down is not always available.
I mean, it's funny, even because reviews wise, I mean, I've had, like, as I said to you there, 3 or 4 reviews of the EP so far, and they've all been pretty good. But I just couldn't understand. I got an email back. I did all the emails and the press packs for reviews myself, you know, saying, will you review this for me? You know, because obviously it's something that you need to raise public awareness and, you know, to get critiques of your music as well, to know for yourself. But I got an email back from a couple of sites saying, absolutely no problem, we'll give you a review, we'll give you a positive review, just fill in this PayPal form, and you get 2 reviews for €30, 5 reviews for €100, let's say, something like that. But, like, again, left with my mouth open, just saying, oh, and can you imagine, like, if you did have the budget and you spent, like, on your gigs, on your, you know, whatever else we were talking about, and then the reviews as well, you're paying for absolutely everything. And I'm sure people are paying for radio as well. Yeah. But it is really all about money when you see it. I mean, there are a few sites that have reviewed it, including MRU, and a few blogs in the States. Again, never been to the States, but, you know, I suppose it's a reflection on people more than on a country. But one Irish site, Golden Pleck, reviewed it last week as well, which was great. But the vast majority are looking for money.
It's quite astonishing, isn't it? That's all I can say. And I think even Trevor Halpin is astonished by putting a question mark about paying for a review.
At this stage, I mean, I know journalists have to be paid for, you know, their work, but there has got to be other ways. You know, you can't charge the artist. Like, you know, if somebody submitted their book to a newspaper to be reviewed, would they be charged for it? You know, it's just, I mean, like, where does it stop, you know?
Yeah, it should be through the advertising. They should be getting paid through that. And then if they're actually selling a physical copy for a certain amount of cent or euro or whatever, they should be getting the money from that, and not asking for people to get paid.
I know it sounds like I'm constantly complaining, but it's just a case of, I feel like this time, you know, I have learned my lesson from the last time, and I'm just not going to fall for all those things again. So I wouldn't want other people to. I know everybody has to learn the hard way sometimes, but I would like to save people from certain pitfalls,
you know? The hassle of having to learn it,
especially because you pay for reviews, and what do you get out of it? You get a good review that's constructed, you know, for what you've paid them. It's not even a real,
you know, that's another
opinion
thing. You mightn't actually be reviewed properly because you've paid them. You want an honest, fair review,
absolutely.
Don't you?
And I feel so far, I mean, obviously sometimes you do have malicious reviews. Like, I remember a few years back, I was absolutely, like, chewed up by a few critics, you know, online, who were, you know, hipster type blogs, who I wouldn't expect to like the music anyway, because, you know, it's not that trend driven type sound. But, you know, this time I've been really lucky, because whatever people have said that has been slightly negative, they've said something really positive for it as well. It's been very fair and balanced and professional, so I'm thankful for that, at least. Yeah,
absolutely indeed. Just before you go, just mention a couple of links you have. It's
just the one, really.
Just the one, the website, which is robertoconnorofficial.com.
Yeah, I've tried to make it that is where you can find absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And I would really like, you know, Facebook is obviously the number one place for people to find everything as well. So, and to obviously discuss the music and give me their feedback. So, you know, Facebook.com/Robert O'Connor Official is where it's at, and then also watching the numbers. The numbers have been rising the past few weeks. So
yeah, very good. And also onto Twitter as well. You use that as well, don't you?
Yeah, it's the same. Twitter /Robert O'Connor, but you can get a direct link from the website. So you know, not to throw too much.
The Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah,
and that's all designed very well by your friend as well, which is really good.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole thing is, you know, I love how he's made it look, you know, as good as a major label production, pretty near anyway, by having the same consistent design through everything and same images, courtesy of David.
So Anyway, the Resistance is the name of the EP, and you're going to try and release the 4 songs or as singles.
The 4 tracks were to be on an album initially, as I said to you last year, and there's a lot more material where that came from. But I certainly don't want to release the EP and 1 single and that be it. I feel like at least 3 out of 4 of the tracks will be singles. You know, we already had Older as a Buzz single. Over is out on the 9th of March, and then I can kind of personally see Too Late being a summer single.
Right. Yeah.
If not here, elsewhere.
Yeah, you're looking at a European package as well.
Yeah,
then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I kind of want to get a couple of the tracks from the first album remastered, and depending on if if I'm approached by any new producers, I would love to do a couple of extra tracks to tag on and have sort of a brand new album for Europe where you have the best of everything I've done, rather than because they haven't heard the first album.
Yeah,
so I think
totally
there's some material that would really fit in well with a bit of remastering, which doesn't cost much, and it would be really nice to put out a really ultimate album with 8 or 9 tracks on there that could potentially be singles. So.
Yeah. And you're playing the 1 gig to promote it, which is the Acoustic 66, which I think is the Friday the 30th of March. I think
you're right. Yeah.
I think
it's
I'm right.
Definitely the last Friday of the month.
March.
Haven't even sat down and had meetings about that yet, but it'll all be happening.
Yeah.
It's definitely happening. I wouldn't play anywhere else for a launch at this stage because I'm so happy with the outcome of the Older gig that I did in November. So I'm really excited. We're just going to do, it probably seems a little bit strange that I'm only doing 1 show. But as I said, I think it's more important for me this time to play 1 show that's really strong and really good, an hour-long set that's a full-on show rather than just a random gig, than me stopping at every open mic and doing, 2 or 3 songs, which is fine. It works for some people, but for me, I think I need a really good show this time. Brilliant. Like November, hopefully.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Robert, for coming in this week.
Thank you very much.
No problem indeed.